It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays, and this Wellness Wednesday we are talking about anxiety. And I want to be clear right off the top, this whole video is about distinguishing between anxiety that everybody has. It's a state of human existence, and an anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorders are real, but not all anxiety is an anxiety disorder. And that's what we're talking about today. People are already probably getting anxiety about a video about anxiety. If you want to support Wellness Wednesday and the connected Leanna Cares service, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. What I want to talk about this for now is I'm seeing a lot of people feel like they're doing something wrong if they feel anxious, right? Everybody feels anxiety sometimes. The issue is that some people may feel it all the time, which isn't good for you. Or they may be feeling it so intensely in certain circumstances that they can't function. My concern with the way anxiety is handled culturally is that because anxiety disorders have become so talked about, like so mainstream, so centered in the experience, that people, if they feel anxious, especially if they're feeling intensely anxious for prolonged periods of time, they think, oh, I have a mental health condition. And they neglect examining environment. They don't look around and try to see if there's something in their life that is causing understandable anxiety, and is there something they can do about it? Too many people are, oh, I have depression, or oh, I have anxiety, and they treat it as if there's something fundamentally wrong with them. They're just sick, or they're just, weak or broken or something like that. Instead of, no, that's your body's early warning system telling you something's not right. And you have the right to do something about that, right? Like you have the right to go, no, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And I'm going to make changes so I feel less anxious. Now, that can be very hard in the short term. It's very important to have a support system if you're going to sort of face some of this anxiety and make good changes so that you can be happier and less stressed. I did this for a really long time. I just thought that being anxious meant I needed to get tougher and stop being so afraid of everything, toughen up. Stupid, toxic thinking, right? Whereas what I actually had to do is change my environment, and change the people I was hanging around, changing the way I was approaching everything, changing the way I was approaching work, changing the way I was approaching friendships, changing the way I was approaching socialization. And because everything I was doing, I was approaching it from a paradigm of obligation, and my primary focus was not being in the way, not being annoying, not being in the way, not all that negative stuff, right? And I had to learn how to take up space in the world. This may sound really weird, but when you're picked on when you're younger, or you're heavily criticized when you're younger, there's this association between people noticing you exist and danger, right? Or intense shame, intense criticism, intense attempts to normalize. And that was something I had to shake off. I did it through projects, right? I did it through my series and my videos and the gaming stuff and, the various content I do. I have the benefit of being able to be pretty complex as a public person. Now, that was by choice, and there were times it really bit me. There were a lot of times that people tried to stop that process from happening. They didn't want me to be authentically myself with all the complications and, some contradictions that come with that. People are much more comfortable when someone is one thing, but people are not one thing. And that coming at things strictly from obligation, it can really make you anxious. It did me, feeling like I just had to be there so that I didn't disappoint anyone, whereas it was interesting because following a religion based on obligation, following the Torah, it's not about sin, it's not about virtue, it's about obligation, tzedakah. These are the things you're supposed to do. Now, of course, the one weird trick about Judaism is there's 613 commandments and nobody can do them all. And that's deliberately to sort of humble. And it's not Pokemon. You're not trying to catch them all. You're trying to do as many as you can within reason, knowing nobody can. And this counter obligation, this counter set of obligations, ironically, specifically because they clashed with the social and obligation of expectation from the rest of the world, because I couldn't do it all, I had to start going, okay, what can I do? And to me, I think that's the whole point of a religion that's sort of like the Dark Souls of commandments. That's how I use it anyway. I'm not suggesting anyone convert I'm just saying my personal experience. You can do that with anything, right? You can use any set of rules. You can even make up your own that is a competing set of obligations to the obligations that are causing you so much anxiety, to give yourself permission to set those boundaries. Now, if you watched the video yesterday with this, obsession with identity, that overabundance of guilt and shame and judginess, when you come up in a system like that, you don't form boundaries. And that's a huge source of anxiety, because if you don't have a firm sense of, where you stop and other people start, when you're not sufficiently self-actualized, that causes a huge amount of stress, because you can't sit and center yourself if you don't know where the center is, because you don't know where your edges are, right? Sounds real simple, but it's very big picture. And how to get there, another thing people do is they rush around, try to do too many things. They never stop and just sit with their own mind. And that's something I'm really bad about as well. I actually had to stop myself this weekend because I was so super excited about the Song of Sparkle Muffin stuff that I almost worked through the weekend again, just because I wanted to get back to people and all this stuff, and it was so cool. And I finally went, no, stop. If you don't take some time, I never do full days because I can't, but you don't take a half day here and just, play video games or do laundry or vacuum or something. Just get away from the obligation. That's why video games are good, as opposed to, Laundry and vacuum are kind of obligations too, but you know, if you don't just take that time and rest, by Wednesday you're going to be burnt out. You're not going to make it to Friday. You don't have enough health bar to get through the week. And that is such a bad habit of mine because I want to be so conscientious and I want to stay current. But you guys have seen how many times I just get sick and worn out and all that stuff. So I'm trying to be better about it. And the first few times, like, oh my God, anxiety. But you do retrain your brain. And if you stop every time something's making you feel anxious, instead of consciously, methodically figuring out what's really going on here, you're never going to overcome that anxiety because you never challenge it, right? Being a little bit outside of your comfort zone is okay. It's better if you have a support system. But it's okay to feel anxious sometimes. Sometimes you should feel anxious, you know? Sometimes anxiety means you care. Sometimes anxiety means you want to do a good job. It just shouldn't become so overwhelming. And I mean, one of the biggest natural fighters of anxiety is just watching your breathing, right? Just, you're feeling anxious, take a couple of real deep breaths, hold it for 3 seconds, in for 4, hold for 3, out for 4. Do that 2 or 3 times. It slows the body down. Getting up and moving is also a really important thing. And that's been really hard in, the COVID Zoom call era, because you get so stacked on meetings, and by the end of the day, I sat in front of freaking Zoom all day. Fuck me, right? And so I try to, it's really good with the cats. They come and get me because I can pick them up and walk around and stuff like that. And hey, I'm playing with the cat, but I'm getting up, moving around, getting the circulation back into the legs. Doesn't have to be intense aerobic exercise, though I try to do that at least 3 times a week too. It just has to be movement. Roll your shoulders, swing your arms in circles, anything like that. Just get the system moving. Flush out those, those scarecrow toxins from Batman. Just get everything moving instead of feeling clenched. And like I said, anxiety disorders are real. Some people do have overwhelming and sometimes unexplained anxiety. Too many people seem to think that even if they're diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, that is it. That is what it's going to be for life. That is not so. The purpose of a diagnosis is not to label you sick or broken. The purpose of a diagnosis is to recommend a treatment approach so that you don't have to feel this way anymore. And if your diagnosis is making you feel sick or broken, you're not getting the proper treatment protocols. And, there's a lot of bad fits between therapists and clients lately. There's a lot of people who can't access mental health services. But, some people, most people benefit from some therapy. It is possible to get too much therapy. But if anything is making you feel hopeless, if any treatment regimen is making you feel hopeless, like it's never going to get better, it's not getting better, change it up. Because sometimes just new experiences, even though they're a little nerve-wracking in and of themselves, those can even alleviate anxiety because they're a distraction, right? But anxiety is not always bad. Anxiety is a cue Anxiety is part of your, your user interface, your heads up display on the world. Anxiety is stressful enough without being afraid of your anxiety. So this is me giving you permission to not be afraid of anxiety. Go ahead, feel that anxiety. Recognize you're feeling it. Move on. Move through it. Not to the point that it's agonizing. If it's just crippling, obviously you can't. But if you can, if it's just minor to moderate anxiety, take a moment, figure out what's going on, label it, identify it, give it a name, put it in its right place, and work through it. Because that's how it'll lessen, right? And if you're finding that impossible, you may have to, in general, slow down. You may have to take more time for yourself, take more time to just relax. Anything that makes you relaxed. You may need to have more social time. You may need to just talk it out, because being alone too much can cause anxiety as well. And this is a sort of a segue into a shameless plug, but I realized I didn't talk about the Leanna Care Service that much. That's part of what the Leanna Care Service does. It's a sounding board. Often just saying something out loud can make you realize you're not bad, you're not to blame. It seems smaller when you talk about it. So that's one thing. There are still some appointments, mostly on Thursdays, but otherwise just talk to a friend or play video games or do something. But the more you learn to appreciate those anxious feelings as an early warning sign and not something to be afraid of or not something to feel guilt and shame over, the more likely they are to lessen and alleviate. Totally counterintuitive, I know, but that's a lot of these things, completely counterintuitive. All right. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK, and link to Leanna Care's sign up form in the description box. Thanks for watching.